Tomorrow, Formula One returns for the Melbourne Grand Prix, the first round of the 2019 season, and tomorrow, okay, probably I've overhyped that slightly, but tomorrow, testing round one practice, FP1 and FP2 will take place in the very early hours of tomorrow morning, so I'm very sorry. As much as I'd love to claim I'm a die-hard fan, I won't be getting up that early. I've got uni early in the morning, so I don't fancy getting up any earlier for that. But it does officially start tomorrow. Today and yesterday we saw season launch events, and we've seen a handful of the drivers taking part in the first official press conference of the season. But today our focus isn't quite on the Melbourne Grand Prix just yet. A video coming out tomorrow will be my first preview for the race for the season, which is, again, bizarre to think we're at that point already. So keep your eye out for that tomorrow around about 3 o'clock. But today, our focus is on the reigning champions, Mercedes. And when I did the random draw, it couldn't have fallen into place any nicer. The second to last team, my boys, Rich Energy, Haas F1. And then the final team, the boys in silver, the defending champions, Constructors' champions since 2014. They've held that title every single year, as well as the drivers, Hamilton picking up 4 championships, Nico Rosberg picking up 1 in 2016. Valtteri Bottas has picked up a handful of wins, but he'll be looking to get himself back into a little bit of form after a difficult end to last year. After winter testing, they're not necessarily the team to beat. Many believe in the F1 world that Ferrari are going to be the #1 team on the grid this year, and Mercedes already are going to have to start playing catch-up a little bit, which is a strange thing to think. However, I don't really share that opinion, if I'm being fully honest with you guys, because Mercedes always do this every single year, and I'm pretty sure Aldas did a video about this, explaining that every year they love to do this almost giant sandbagging, if you want to call it that. This giant manipulation of the media that, oh no, they're on the back foot. They did a similar sort of thing last year, showed up to Melbourne, put it on pole, should have won the race, had the best car there, and overall didn't necessarily have the best car, to be honest, in the entire championship last year. However, they certainly weren't half a second off Ferrari, and I also believe reports coming from Mercedes saying they're going to be half a second off this year. I don't see that whatsoever. But let's quickly take a look at the team's history. The team based in Brackley, England, its chief is Toto Wolff, and its technical chief is James Allison. He was a former Ferrari employee before moving over to Mercedes. The chassis there says C. That is not the chassis. That's an incorrect statement there, but the power unit is a Mercedes power unit. They're one of the 4 factory teams on the grid this year, if you include Red Bull as a factory Honda team. The team's very first entry was in 1954, where they actually won one of their 7 drivers' world titles. They've won 5 constructors' titles overall, with 87 race wins, 101 pole positions, and 66 fastest laps. And their lineup this year, Lewis Hamilton and Valtteri Bottas, will be looking to add numbers and increase those figures where best they can. Reigning world champion Lewis Hamilton is on 5 concurrent Drivers' World Championships, but as I just mentioned, he's definitely going to be hungry for #6 as he tries to hunt down Michael Schumacher for the most titles of all time. His teammate Valtteri Bottas in a very different position to Lewis Hamilton. Hamilton, many see as very secure at Mercedes and will only leave Mercedes if he wants to. There's no way the team are going to let their star driver, arguably, and I suppose statistically, the best driver in the world right now, they don't want to let him go. So Hamilton's in that position, whereas Valtteri Bottas, very much this year, is fighting for his career after a somewhat lacklustre 2017 when he joined the team and what could only really be described as a disappointing 2018. He comes into 2019 with a lot of pressure on his shoulders, but also the fact that Esteban Ocon and George Russell, Mercedes youth drivers, are going to be floating around, sniffing like hungry wolves around that Mercedes seat now. There's no waiting anymore. Ocon is a Mercedes test driver now and 3rd driver, so he is looking desperately to get back onto the grid. George Russell is now on the grid, so he's not in F2 anymore. There's no waiting for him. However, it seems he's going to have a few years at Williams first before he moves on to anything greater. So Bottas's main threat, I would say, is Esteban Ocon, but really I think it's more himself. If he can really put together a few good races this year, I would be surprised if Mercedes got rid of him. But before we talk about Bottas, because we can talk about Bottas for a very long time, let's talk about Lewis Hamilton. A character in Formula One who I think has brought awareness to Formula One in places in the world that really have never had exposure to Formula One, and even different groups. He does a really good job of bringing the younger generation into Formula One, but also peeing off some of the older generation. A really divisive character is Lewis Hamilton, a little bit like DRS. You either love it or you hate it, and that's definitely the case with Lewis Hamilton. However, what cannot be denied is he is a legend of Formula One, and that's no British bias, although if you want to put that, fair enough. 5 world championships speaks for itself, to be fully honest with you. 73 race wins, 229 Grand Prix entered, over 3,000 points, and the world record for the most pole positions of all time with 83. The man from Stevenage, England, comes into this year as Mercedes' #1 driver. Many see him as the favourite to get this title, even though people also think that Ferrari has the best car due to the somewhat spicy relationship people are expecting to be, I suppose, present between Sebastian Vettel and Charles Leclerc. People think Hamilton is going to get really just a clean run at the title this year, with Bottas being a nice wingman, a nice #2 driver. I'm not too sure about that just yet, but I think if Lewis can get a few really strong races under his belt early, unlike what he did last year, he really struggled in the opening few rounds of the season, did Lewis Hamilton last year. If he can get shots firing straight away, then I'm sure he'll be aiming for that title, and that will be his aim if that was not already apparent. I've done people's targets this year, but Lewis's will be to win the title. But what about his teammate? What about Valtteri Bottas? Only 119 Grand Prix entered, about half that of Lewis Hamilton. No world championships so far for the Finn, hailing from Nastala. 3 race wins so far, all coming in 2017, all for Mercedes. No wins last year is the big outlier on his resume, but 6 pole positions at his time in 2 seasons with Mercedes. If Lewis Hamilton is his teammate, that's okay, actually. I'm fine with that, although still, if he really wanted to be challenging for a title, he's going to have to up that this year. At the beginning of last year, he looked so strong to Valtteri Bottas, and at a stage, if he didn't get that puncher in Azerbaijan, he actually would have been leading the championship at that point, and I think if that would have happened, the title completely switches. Mercedes probably, I still think, would have eventually favoured Hamilton, but Bottas had plenty of opportunities over the season to get a win, but twice was held back by team orders, Germany and Russia. You got the unlucky nature of Azerbaijan, of, I was going to say China, but that was a really good strategy worked off by Red Bull in that particular case. Bahrain, he didn't make that move for the lead, and you got races like Austria where reliability just didn't go his way. So Bottas, very unlucky last year, but also as the season got on, you could tell it was taking its toll on him, and he really just crumbled, fell apart at the end of the year, and ultimately ended up 5th in the standings. And considering at the beginning of the year, it sort of looked like he might be able to get in the title fight. That just seems so far away now. Finishing 5th, not only behind Kimi Raikkonen, but behind Max Verstappen in the Red Bull. That was not good enough last year from Bottas. So his target, I think, will be 3rd in the drivers' standings. I mean, obviously, in being in the top seat, he will want to win the title. But for Mercedes, I think they just need him to be that wingman for Lewis Hamilton, try and be that really solid backup driver, taking away points from Ferrari. And if Mercedes do get that Constructors' title, I think Bottas will stay, because I do think he is a stable driver. He's not going to cause disruptions within a team, and if he does move on, somewhere like Ferrari could very easily pick him up, because he's he's got a sort of personality and a nature about him that he's not going to cause disruption within a team, and I think that's what Mercedes like about him. But obviously, he would love to be fighting for wins once again, love to be fighting for a title, and that new go faster beard he's grown, you never know, that could be the difference for Valtteri Bottas. But who do I think is going to come out on top? I think this is probably going to be the biggest landslide of any of the polls we have done so far this week, but I do believe it will be Lewis Hamilton who comes out on top in the Mercedes team battle, and unfortunately I do think it'll be quite a sizable gap, but I do think Bottas will keep his seat. In the top right hand corner, if you press the little I button, you can have your say. Who do you think is going to win the teammate battle, Bottas or Hamilton? But I can imagine which way that is going to go. And also, if you haven't checked already, in the description will be a link to my Fantasy League for 2019. It's still just about in the nick of time if you want to get there before Melbourne. But thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.